Miss Marsh and I have kind of a similar opinion of, and I think Genesis bears out the involvement of God through your day. So we had a guy in a Bobcat tearing out a driveway. They screwed up. They poured it wrong. So they tear it all out. So I'm in the garage standing thinking, the wind's blowing at me. I can't quite see because the dust is everywhere. I'm a little brighter than this. I should not stand right where the dust is. I'll move around. So as soon as I moved out of the garage and stood in another location, the guy literally stops the Bobcat and he yells at me. Of course I can't, or machinery. And one of these kids comes over and picks up this piece of steel rebar and says, this flew right into where you were standing about 30 seconds ago.
Wow.
I said, okay. So, it just would have hit me in the head. It wouldn't have done anything. It was yes, that's true. So I just appreciate the Lord looking out. Life happens. And I don't mean, but sometimes the Lord looks after us a little bit. Hit you over the head with the two before. So once you get out of the garage, you go over here. So, Doctor, any announcements, Miss Judy?
I don't know of anything coming up, but Roger probably does.
I got a pile of stuff here. I need somebody to help finish the attendance and count the offering whenever we get done with it.
Okay, here.
I have an announcement.
Announcements here.
We need to have people sign up for the treats list if you want calories and sugar.
Next
You can take this. And get
I'll take this.
Okay. That's part of what's coming here.
It's coming.
Okay. Okay. That side. You take that side. Okay. There we go.
You want one?
I do. That would be nice for me to have. Got Nancy's announcement. Here's the treat list to sign up if you're willing to provide the treat kinds of things and circulate that. And let's see. I'll start this one and just my pen. Judy Wickham has moved to Texas, and we didn't realize that was all happening when it was happening. And this is a card. This is a card just to say goodbye. We miss you. It's been a joy to know you. And any of you that would like to sign that, this will circulate around, and it's prepared to go. Okay. Susanna is hoping to graduate. Susanna's planning to graduate. Well, we graduated from seminary this May, and she would like to invite class members to her graduation, and I think apparently to a lunch kind of thing that she wanted to host. And this class has been, I think, pretty special for, first of all, Susanna, and then Susanna and Sam. And she'd like to pass around invitations to that. So, Susanna, if you want to sort of start that process. And I've got a couple cards to read here. Dear Anne and KCFC, thank you so much for demonstrating the true love and grace of God as you helped me in so many ways as I moved. Your continuing prayers are appreciated as I walk the long road to save some of my sight. I love, Melissa Hammond. And Times Square, thank you for all the ways you helped Melissa move. You organized, you packed, you cleaned, you slept.
Schlepp. That's a good term.
Okay. Not slept, slept.
Yeah, we slept.
You hoisted, you picked up supplies, you spoke words of encouragement for her ongoing health issues. Thank you for serving. From Anne. We are grateful for the opportunity to serve. And one last thing. Please announce your class this morning. I'll send this around too. The Fine Arts, Department of Fine and Performing Arts at Mid-American Nazarene University is presenting On With the Show, a Pops concert featuring in choirs next Sunday at 3:30 at the Bell Cultural Events Center. Tickets are $6. There's a phone number by which they can be reserved or a website. And apparently there's plans for the People Mover bus to take a group of folks from here over to there. And so let me send that around. If any of you are interested, you can write the information down.
portion of the other wedding.
I think that
Next weekend.
covers all the stuff.
Oh, so you got that. You're so.
Sure, I can do it more stuff.
That's right, you can wait that. You have a couple hours.
I'm taking a nap.
It will.
For those of you that have expressed interest, concern, or curiosity, or any of the above about Dorothy, she's home, but not ill. I think if she knew the scripture to say this, she'd say her ox is in the ditch. But she wouldn't even do it that way. Meeting in on the seminary property since Friday night through Wednesday morning. The Global Consortium of Nazarene Graduate Schools of Theology. 6 schools around the world that offer master's and or doctoral work. And UTS is a host in this organization. And their presidents and deans, although all of them have varying titles, rectors, one will be the vice chancellor of the African Nazarene University, are present and are at our home for lunch and the afternoon work sessions today. And so Dorothy's working on that. And your thoughts for her, I think everything's in pretty good control. But they've closed 2 of the roads that we travel between our house and the church. And so some of the folks finding their way through the muddy dirt roads. So it'll be an interesting challenge. And the folks from some places in the world who thought they were coming to the United States have to deal with dirt and mud and something. We'll find out some people in our country still live like some people in some of their countries. Jerry Lambert and Pearl are very involved in the hosting process also, and I know they're curious about the roads and the rain and all this other stuff. So that's where they are.
Roger, when David was praying about Kenya, all the university, I couldn't help think about our university in Kenya. And I just felt like, since, and I don't know if anything was said there or not, but it was. Okay, so we just remember our seminary that as a Christian seminary, you could be targeted.
We have actually 2 sites. We offer classes on the site that was purchased that you guys are at. We also have a downtown Nairobi site now. Over 4,000 students are part of African Nazarene University. And security has been beefed up, apparently by the government too, around the university. Armed guards are patrolling around the perimeter outside the university, as well as their normal security guards that operate inside campus property. I had a moment of panic when I thought perhaps that group of folks would come to Sunday school today.
How many?
Something about 17 or 18 or. The Korean folks have all found preaching places to go preach today. But what the panic was when I opened my Bible and saw the next chapter. This is where we stopped 2 weeks ago, with Joseph being carried off and sold into Egypt. And I think there should be some sense, all of chapter 37 was really about Joseph and being his father's favorite, and then his brothers hating him, and the drama of them throwing him into a cistern or pit, and finally selling him off. And so the narrator, I think, thinks that whether you are reading or listening, you probably are now ready to find out, so what happens to Joseph in Egypt? Well, before we get there, I'd like someone to read verses 1 to 11 of chapter 38 of Genesis.
It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and settled near a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. There later, Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He married her and went into her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Again she conceived and bore a son, whom she named Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she named him Shelah. She was in Chezeb when she bore him. Judah took wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But his firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her. Raise up offspring for your brother." But since Onan knew that the offspring would not be his, he spilled his semen on the ground whenever he went in to his brother's wife, so that he would not give offspring to his brother. What he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up," for he feared that he too would die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house.
Any questions?
Pretty self-explanatory.
Well, a lot of it is. Part of the shock value of it, the nature of it, is we were expecting something about Joseph. And all of a sudden, Judah. And it'll get worse. What clue does verse 1 offer us that this isn't going to turn out really well?
Married outside of faith.
Okay, in particular, verse 2, you get that. Where were these brothers whom we last knew about them, or last encountered them in the narrative, chapter 37?
They were in Shiloh. Shechem.
They were in Dothan, actually, up from Shechem a little ways, keeping the flock. They traveled 55, 60 miles from home, trying to find grass to feed the flock. And so they're all together. And what does verse 1 tell you Judah does?
He separated himself from the rest.
Separates himself from his family, from his tribe, from his clan. In our context, I don't think a whole lot about that. Some of us don't. Maybe it was the weirdness of my family that I was raised thinking, if God calls you, you go wherever he sends you. And if you leave our home when God calls you away, we never see you again. You'll be sorry. But you've got to obey God and follow God wherever you go. And that's not quite, I suppose, one extreme, but on the other, there's folks who just, they don't want any of the family to go anywhere. And biblical culture picture that you were expected to stay together, you were expected to live together. Jacob would have had a big tent. And maybe the brothers when they married, would get separate tents, or maybe they would just add on rooms on the tent, side by side by side. So that was the kind of cultural expectation, and Judah violates that by abandoning him with his father's sheep, so they're short-handed, and he goes off, and he goes someplace that's not anywhere we've heard of yet, Adullam. And he marries a Canaanite girl. And we've already encountered in the story of Jacob being sent by Isaac and Rebekah back to the homeland of Haran because Esau had married Canaanites, and they were quite distressed about that. So there's already stuff that's kind of at work in this text that suggests all is not well in Judah. His relationship with his family, with his brothers, with his father, and he is rebelling against kind of the expectations of the family and in a certain sense of the faith, though it's not altogether clear how well that had all been delineated at this stage of Revelation. What do you make of the statement in verse 7? And it comes again verse 10, I think that the Lord puts one of these folks to death.
It's funny that his name is Air. Yeah. It's like error.
Okay,
Scratched out.
well, I'm guessing that's a coincidence of languages,
I wonder if that's
like
where
the
the
wilderness of sin, which doesn't have anything to do with sin. It's just a place name. If you put the dot in other places, the wilderness of Shin, that has nothing to do with our leg bones. So, yeah.
But you can't help but wonder if that's the derivative of the word.
This was difficult. These are difficult verses for people who believe that God never does anything bad. That He's all loving, forgiving. It's pretty harsh.
Yeah, or one of the ways, and it may or may not be of any value to any of you, that I'm not sure why it seems of value to me, explained to me early in my educational process that the ancient Israelites had no concept of secondary causes. There was only one primary cause that caused everything, and that was God. And you see that then in statements like this. You see that in I forget whether it's Chronicles or more likely the history, that God put an evil spirit in David or some other king to number the people. And so, like, every cause is attributed to God in some portions of Scripture. And this is one of those that in some sense, I was frustrated enough, irritated, puzzled. The Hebrew uses a causative stem. I suppose you could translate the Lord caused him to die, which actually doesn't take God off the hook any more than put him to death. This doesn't quite sound as violent, that maybe God caused him to die through some kind of natural consequence of his own wickedness or whatever. But it's an interesting sort of statement there. This text also introduces us to what's come to be called the Levirate marriage process of the ancient Near East, in which when a man is married and has not produced any male offspring, should he die, his brothers are responsible. A brother, usually the oldest brother in the line, is responsible to produce offspring for him. And the child produce sons. The son, the children that the second brother produces are named after and are considered to be, in their legal system and in their culture, the children of the dead husband, deceased brother. Now, momentarily we'll look at text that shows that Onan is not the only person that seemed to not like the idea. What's the positive benefit of this? What problem are they trying to solve? Do you have any sense of that?
I think it was a legal thing where they wanted to inherit land or whatever the estate was.
Okay. If you want to start at first point, marriages were elaborate economic exchanges as well as personal exchanges. That both the bride and the groom brought financial resources into the relationship, into the marriage. Dowries, sometimes called now, bride price, bride wealth. And that essentially remains a part of the originating family, but is always available for the married couple. But when the husband dies, then the question of where all that money goes is on the table. All that money was, I'm doubtful that it's like big bucks, but all that resource was for the purpose of equipping and enabling the new family to survive and eventually thrive and produce more children. And so the management of that money, if you just disperse it or return it,
It was to help the widow and the children too. I mean,
precisely provide for them. But in that culture, a male must manage it. And so there needs to be a son that will take this and inherit it and in essence, care for his mother when she is old. so that she is not starving to death and has no kind of resources. When she's married and she's got this kind of financial issue hanging, she's not really eligible to remarry because she's locked up in probate or something. And so the economic issues that are all bound up in that culture of marriage are kind of tied up. So there's the economic larger thing, and then there's the provision, who will care for her when she's old? Where will she belong? And will she have dignity as being a mother of a family, or is she the cast-off who goes back to father's house and she's dependent till he dies, and then what happens? She's dependent on one of her brothers until they die, and then she's dependent on a nephew until she dies, and none of that was perceived in the culture as a valued thing. You have
Just a thought, like maybe Onan did like the idea because he also knew that further that child can claim his half share of the property also.
okay.
What?
It's suggesting the child might claim some of Onan's share of property as well as his dead brother Er's share of the property.
Whoa.
So that's a possible motivation. We don't know his motivation, but it's clear from this text he doesn't want to do this. He goes through, indelicately put this, he goes through the motions, and then at the climax just withdraws it and frustrates the purpose of the whole thing from happening. Which, interestingly enough, verse 10 says, how does the Lord feel about that? The Lord is displeased because Onan is not stepping up to his responsibility to care for his brother's heritage and name and his sister-in-law's future.
Question, would the scenario be different if that wasn't Judah's firstborn?
I don't think so.
It would be the same even though firstborn, all that comes with the firstborn.
Another text deals with this, and interestingly, you can see the reluctance again. When brothers reside together, one of them dies and has no son, so there's no indication that's just
Firstborn, okay.
the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her, taking her in marriage and performing the duty of a husband's brother to her. Obviously, it's interesting. The text assumes we would all know what the duty of a husband's brother is.
Yeah.
And the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the deceased brother, so that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. And there you see, I think, the importance of family name carrying on and having its future. I think this class. The concept of resurrection or even immortality of the soul, everlasting life. There appears to be no evidence that Israel had any awareness of that kind of stuff until very near the end of the Old Testament period. Which meant the way you survived into the future was through your children. And so the loss of a child or the loss of the potential loss of grandchildren means your future ends here instead of having everlasting life or ongoingness. But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother's widow shall go up to the elders of the gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. If he persists, saying, I have no desire to marry her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sand off his foot, spit in his face, and declare, this is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house.
Cool.
Throughout Israel, his family should be known as the house of him whose sandal is pulled off.
Whoa. Dirty.
Now,
It's less than today.
I think, a part of what you see there is this was taken fairly seriously.
Yeah.
It had social implications. It had family implications. It had provision for a woman's future implications. It had provision for a woman's dignity and sense of worth implications. All of those things were sort of at stake in this, and it's resolved in that culture in a means that seems, for lack of more precise language, really weird to us. But it's the way they function. But you can see even from the Deuteronomy text, it was not a happy process. And there were lots of folks who didn't want to do it and resisted it. And so they had to create this kind of weird legislation to keep the pressure on people to fulfill their duties to take care essentially of these women.
Roger,
Yeah.
who was Tamar? Who's family is she
Tamar
related
is the wife of the firstborn son.
I know, but who's her family?
We don't know.
Well, how do we know she was a Canaanite?
It isn't actually said here, except
No,
that.
it's his son, wife.
Except that. Who else is there?
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
So this is just deduction.
well, there's the 12 sons, and this isn't any of their kids that we know of. So it's Canaanite.
That's right, she's not one of their.
Yeah. In other words, they didn't go back to Haran and get another cousin.
That's what I was wondering, if she was related in any way.
Don't think so. Let me
That
show
pattern.
you. I didn't bring my pointer, sorry.
Well,
Oh, my pen's still around. Dead Sea, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron, which is the homestead. They're way up in Dothan when he leaves. Well, I saw it. Here's Adullam here. Chezib, most scholars believe, is an alternate spelling for Askeh. And so this is the kind of area, kind of mostly west, maybe a tad south of Bethlehem. Bethlehem, 6 miles south of Jerusalem. There,
I don't mean it's
about,
a bad way.
about a long ways from Haran.
I don't mean it's in a bad way. But why is God involved? I mean, in the sense that, all right, it says was a wicked man. Well, there's a lot of wicked men. There's been a lot of wicked men.
Yep.
And so God zaps him in some way. So God was responsible for taking him out. And now he's taking out the next guy. I'm just saying, why is God involved in this?
And why, how do they know God was involved?
Yeah.
Well, what about Ananias and Sapphira? Could they just be examples?
and also,
We got a lot of questions on the floor all of a sudden.
That's right.
The answers of which I don't know. But I think Jenny's might be by wicked folks that God. Paul says in Romans 3:26, I think, he passes over previously committed sins and just doesn't do anything for a long time. But there are occasions where he steps in. I've lost the guy's name. That put his hand up to steady the ark when it's on the traveling on ox cart, and he's killed. Uzzah, or Uzzah, yeah. The Ananias and Sapphira one, I think I can figure out an explanation. I have no idea if God thought this. The Uzzah, I think I can figure out an explanation. That there's a critical kind of, in the Ananias and Sapphira, this is a critical turning point of people starting to try to, this is my interpretation, they were trying to fake the work of the Holy Spirit, of being spiritual people and being renowned for giving away their money to the poor. And God just said, you need to know this isn't something you play and mess around with. And so he created a severe consequence. I think maybe something like that to go with us. This text, I have a harder time figuring out, unless it's a part of a whole chapter-long story by which Judah's attention is being turned from himself back toward God for purposes of Judah's long-term future in the promises of God. Because Judah, by the end of this book, will be the person, the Messiah promises will all come through. So maybe that's why, but I don't know. We're sort of guessing, trying to explain God, and that's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Since since, so did, you know, who was God's hitman? Did he leave a calling card or something like that? There's more puzzle here than there is answer. Thanks for bringing it up. Susanna, and then Jenny, and then Rick, and then we got to get moving to the personal stuff.
Isn't it also interesting here how the author puts, that's how the author puts God in favor of somebody that has no history with, that apparently doesn't even know God. Tamar, like, she appears as being favored by God because she's protected by him. And she's not even part of anything we heard before. She's not part of the people of God, so she's a complete stranger in the middle of the story. And they don't find it odd to put God protecting her.
There's all kinds of stuff in this chapter. For lack of a better term, given the ancient world's culture, that's pro-woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
We're going to take care of this lady. You can't abuse her. You don't violate what the culture is set up to care for her. And she will now take initiative in the next section. Jenny.
Francine Rivers wrote a really good Bible study on, or a book, fiction, well, subtext and imagination, sanctified imagination. It was good, with a lot of questions at the back, and she really did a good job with Tamar and this whole thing, bringing in the culture and good study of the.
This has great potential for a novelist.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Excuse me, to David's question, you bring up periodically that the readers, this speaks to the readers and successive generations. Apparently God was very serious about the Levirate, is it a law or tradition or whatever you want to call
The
it.
Deuteronomy would be called the law. Yeah.
He's very serious about it, and this would be a way of showing that, like Ananias and Sapphira was a way of showing respect to the Holy Spirit. Successive generations would pause before they violated this. I think that was.
Yeah. Good point. And what it's just, I don't think it's just the law, but for a law, but it's a law that's designed to care for a lady who's lost her husband and has no resources.
And apparently it survived all. Jesus used it that he was debating with the Pharisees, the 7 brothers.
Yeah. By the by, this Tamar ends up in the genealogy of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. And so maybe there's purpose in all of that or result, and I'm not sure which is the first. Let's take a look at verses 12 to 19 now. Do note the ending of what we just read. There's another brother that should have, by Levirate law, been married to her, and Judah must think he's got a dangerous black widow on his hand. He's not going to let her.
He's
not going to risk his third son on this lady. Although the text makes it quite clear the Lord is the problem and the guys are the problem, not her. And so he sends her back to her father's house, which is shameful because with no legal divorce, nothing. He has sent her back with no status, no ability to remarry. She's still under his power, but he won't, an authority, but he won't take any responsibility for her. Judah is functioning as a jerk at that point, big time. So, here we go. Somebody read 12 to 19.
In course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah's time of mourning was over, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep, she put off her widow's garments, put on a veil, wrapped herself up, and sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. She saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He went over to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me?
that you may come into me? He answered, I will send you a kid from the flock. And she said, only if you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, what pledge shall I give you? She replied, your signet and your cord and the staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she got up and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood.
Or maybe we shouldn't stop here. Tamar strikes back. Yeah, well, let's go on. Let's read 20 to 26 someone.
When Judah sent the kid by his friend the Adulamite to recover the pledge for the woman, he couldn't find her. He asked the townspeople, where's the temple prostitute who was at Enaim by the wayside? But they said, no prostitute has been here. So he returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Moreover, the townspeople said, no prostitute has been here. Judah replied, let her keep the things as her own. Otherwise, we will be laughed at, you see. I sent this kid and you could not find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has played the whore. Moreover, she is pregnant as a result of whoredom. And Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, it was the owner of these who made me pregnant. And she said, take note, please, whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. Then Judah acknowledged them and said, she is more in the right than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah. And he did not lie with her again.
There is literary potential. You have an idea now for a Hallmark movie, huh?
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I liked her emphasis. Actually, we did a movie about love right now. It worked.
Without some of this subject.
Without the rest of it.
Yeah.
We just had two people living together that weren't in love, and then they fell in love. And, you know, that works every time.
Great story.
Maureen O'Hara, John Wayne.
Well, you notice in verse 12, Judah's wife dies. Part of, I think, the purpose of that being in the text is to say now, he will not have sexual activity at home with his wife. And so, in a certain sense, he is now susceptible to temptation. And Tamar discovers this. At this point, she notes, the narrator sort of put this in at verse 14, Shelah has grown up. The excuse that Judah gave for not marrying her to Shelah, he's too young, is past, and he's not followed through, and he's left her at her father's house in this state of sort of social limbo. And she takes matters in her own hands. Risky sort of thing. You can tell by the response when she's discovered pregnant by that Judah wants to put her to death. There's a risky sort of thing there. So she knows the route. She goes and plants herself there, dresses as a prostitute. It's interesting, there are two words for prostitute that appear in this text. In verse 15, Judah thought her to be a prostitute. It's a common word for a prostitute. In 21, 22, notice the New RSV starts with the rest of the phrase, the words are the same. Where's the temple prostitute? Which is a, the word in Hebrew is, where's the holy lady? The sanctified lady. Because in the worship of Baal, women were set apart to be temple or sacred prostitutes because of the nature of that religious faith that believed that was through the sexual activity of Baal, the god, that fertility of crops and people and of rain, all those things that make for crops and animals and plants and humans to flourish, that all depended upon the sexual activity of Baal. And the way they sort of enticed Baal to do his job was through what cultural anthropologists benignly call imitative magic. And so Baal temples had no roofs or ceilings on them, and they used temples, sacred prostitutes, who, if you were needing rain, or if you needed safe birth of a calf, or for your sheep to breed, you went up and paid your money at the temple and showed Baal what he needed to be doing. So those people, you can't quite imagine this. I can tell on some of your faces already. Some of you can't quite imagine that the temple prostitutes had higher status than sort of street prostitutes.
You would call those the entrepreneurs.
Pardon?
Call the street prostitutes.
They were just entrepreneurs. The others were religious devotees. Yeah. Which this is a chapter on cultural differences from our world. At any rate, he gets him. And he hasn't brought his checkbook or he hasn't got enough cash. And so he promises to pay her the next day, and she's smart and knows this is the guy who's failed to follow through on marrying her. She knows he's a liar and a cheat. So she says, well, I need a deposit security to get payment here tomorrow. And signet ring was the thing that was like your signature, your stamp, with the cord that held it. And the stabs were often engraved with people's names on it. So she has his identity now in her hands. And if you want to think about the foolishness of Judah, it's not just the foolishness of his sexual indiscretion or stupidity. He's also given his identity away. He's given his credit cards all to her. He's given her his birth certificate. He's let her take over his computer with all his private information. And he is apparently so passionate and so dumb, he has put himself totally at her mercy. And in a kind of naive, passionate innocence, thinks this will all work out when he sends the money. Notice he doesn't take it the next day himself. There's a sense of shame already there that he sends it through his friend who can't find it. He says, well, maybe she was just passing through. But when he finds out she's pregnant, what's his response?
Kill her. Righteous indignation.
I think the text intends for even people of the ancient world to recognize. Well, he's the one that's brought this about, and he thinks she's in the wrong. And he's going to put her to death for that. At this point is now where she throws the dice to see if she's going to live or die. And so she pulls out the signet ring and the cord and the staff and said, and this is the father of the baby. And Judah acknowledged them and said, she is more in the right than I.
That's amazing.
Right.
Number one, it's amazing that he would confess that. Number two, and it may be the English translators trying to worry about our sensibilities. He doesn't say she's righteous. She says she's more in the right. She is more righteous than I am. And it's an amazing recognition on the part of this man that he had mistreated this lady in a variety of ways, actually. And we don't know if he ever gave Shelah to her, but he set about apparently trying to make things right. And the last 3-4 verses of the chapter describe the birth and, interestingly enough, another set of twins. The first one sticks his arm out and they tie a cord around him, he pulls it back in, and then the other one's born. And the second one, the firstborn, but the one who didn't stick his hand out, Perez, is the father listed with Tamar in the genealogy back to Jesus. Now, 2 minutes. Why should this be in the Bible?
It's another one of these amazing string lucky events, amazing coincidences.
What, like limited snippets?
She heard that he was going. She happened to be there, or she planned to be there, but he happened to notice her. He happened to give his stuff. She happened to get pregnant on that very day. She happened to be found out. She happened to, you know, God orchestrates some of the most amazing incidents. He wanted Tamar in the genealogy. And he went about it kind of a circuitous route, but he did it nonetheless.
I thought it was interesting that he participated in a type of worship that was not with the one God that he had been raised with.
Mm-hmm.
It showed how much he had brought into the culture.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. There's a couple of
She knew he would react that way. I mean, so apparently this was not something new. She knew he would buy into it.
Yeah, her risk mostly was when he got the signet ring afterwards, where he stonewalled her, kind of try to bluff his way through, or would he confess? It strikes a couple of observations seem to me. Number one, it's another clear evidence that Scripture never whitewashes characters and makes them sort of plastic saints or holier than they are. I don't think the story is in here for the purpose of us thinking we ought to do what Judah did, or what Tamar did, or what the friend did, or what any of them did. It's I think, a fairly sordid sort of story. It is built around a cultural way of caring for women who were without the resource of a husband. And it respected that piece of caring for a person. It respects and highlights this woman, Tamar. That God apparently doesn't agree with a culture that says women can't say anything, think anything, or do anything. God seems to respond well. He's got a whole string in this book of Genesis of women who do incredible, imaginative, creative sorts of things to advance their family, to care for their children, to care for their own circumstances. And we finally end up with, of course, the genealogy of Jesus. But it seems to me the two things I want to take from this is God cares for people, particularly those that are the marginalized, the widows in this case, a specific example, and is willing to work to some degree with the cultural means that the culture provides to help those folks. And I think we have better mechanisms in place in our culture than that one. But we don't always make use of the mechanisms in our culture to care for folks. And we look for loopholes and cracks and let people fall through cracks, and we ignore their plight, which I think God doesn't do. And God, out of pretty crummy stuff, behavior on the parts of these people, keeps working towards some good outcome, because this appears to become transformative in Judah's life. He will be the one, when they're in Egypt, in several chapters ahead, that will step forward to offer his life as the ransom instead of Benjamin that Joseph is demanding. Something happens in here for him, and I think that's another part of what God is doing, not just long range for a genealogy 1,800 years later, but also trying to work in changing individuals' lives. And that strikes me as immensely hopeful news for us. Father, we didn't learn this story in children's Sunday school. And it challenges our capacity to understand what you're at work doing in your word sometimes. but we are thankful that you care for the folks no one else seems to care for. And that you express, bring about disapproval, condemnation of short-circuiting the systems that would care for widows and orphans and innocent victims. And we are thankful that no matter how stupid we may behave, or someone whom we love, how stupid they may behave, you are not out of hope for them, and you are willing and eager to find a way to redeem them too, or us too. Open our hearts even in this time of worship as we celebrate again and further the resurrection of our Lord Jesus, by which you have in essence funded all of your redeeming grace and working plans. We ask in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Whose video thing? Is it this? Yeah. I mean, whose idea or who's in charge of the mission?
Galen thought it up. The equipment that we have so far. Gigi and Braden are sort of trying to carry them all.
I didn't know about how urgent it was to have the live interaction questions. Because that is where the bottleneck of quality
will occur.
That's what's causing.
I think that's part of the reason Braden wanted to work on other steps first to make sure everything was working smooth. That's the impression I have.
Yeah, because I edited the first one, the one where the president of the seminary spoke.
Okay.
And edited the first part out because they did the whole class, and I tried to, I audited the audio as well, and tried to adjust it because it was not very clear.
Okay.
But the quality is just, it's not that great because it's a live file, so you're only getting as much as you can stream up.
Okay.
Instead of working with a dead recorded file, and then I don't know if we could have this, but I think Braden, we need to get a file of yourself. YouTube account or Vimeo or something, so that we can help. Because I think he's doing it now through his own Google account.
You suggested that too.
Yeah, so, but I think where I'm having trouble is he's in charge.
That's the problem. Nobody is totally.
Anyway, I'm gonna go home.
Very great.
So yeah, hold on. Yeah, but now she's
You have to familiarize yourself very well with
Probably better to use here.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about having people writing articles. Yeah, well, thank you.
And I don't want to, we don't want to.
Most of the time, we discovered that. Actually, we already made all those things. Those ones that you early.
So I guess we have to leave it all actually out of the here within us. Then we can just cut it out.
You still here? Thank you. Sit with you down. Brian, want me to find Brian? He might be waiting for you. Brian is, I know.
Did you go there? Galen wants that.
Galen's with the money in it, and we're.
Yeah. I really like to see it.
No, you should email me. I mean, there are things you want to do.
Well, I did. I mean, I played the audio and took out as much info as I could.
Yeah.
It sounded more not great. I just chopped it.
You'll be good.
The best quality you get is only what's so
Yeah.
it's not great. You know, it's not.
Right, it's not professional, we're not.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, I think people will understand.
Yeah.
Did you just graduate this last May? I was graded.
So that was all this. So we'll wait until you get an account created and then we'll put up that first one. The next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I.
Dr. Sandberg.
Yeah, Doc. What's her name?
Sandberg.
Carlos Sandberg.
Well,